Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of the e-commerce lab by Ecomcy, the place where everything related to Amazon, FBA, private label, and e-commerce. My name is Vincenzo Toscano, founder and CEO of Ecomcy, and today we bring you Haseeb, who is the founder and CEO of Brandkit, which is basically a solution that will help you automate systems, tools, and solid strategies to save your business from harsh surprises when it comes to cash flow and inventory. So I know Haseeb has extensive experience when it comes to supplying a chain, and that's why I wanted to bring you on board today because we know the last couple of years we've been seeing a lot of struggle in the space in terms of people don't really understanding how to be efficient with their inventory and everything around the supply chain itself. And that's why I wanted to bring you today on board to, touch some of those points and provide as much value as possible. So Hasib, it's a pleasure to have you here. How you doing, my friend?
Yeah, thank you, Vincenzo. I think thank you for this inviting me. I was looking forward to that to discuss some points around supply chain, and I will start a little bit with about my background. I know I haven't spent a lot of time in the industry, like it is almost 3 years, but
Yeah.
uh, while working with big companies that are having focusing on the supply chain part specifically, and I have seen a lot of gap that other sellers are missing. So I think today the whole purpose will be to cover those points. And I have been working in the aggregate industry for the last 2 years, so I definitely know all the ins and outs and how they are managing the supply chain part. So excited to kick off and let's jump right into the topic.
Yeah, that's great. So thank you very much for the introduction. So yeah, as you mentioned, you already have some experience working with aggregators, as you mentioned, and I bet you also you have experience working with multiple brands, and that's why I think I'm gonna use that opportunity to kickstart with one of the first questions of the days, which is basically the big question is why actually nobody's focusing around a supply chain, because I feel like everybody talks about it, but realistically, and we see that as well when we work with clients and we do audits, nobody's really being efficient when it comes to implementation of it. So maybe you can give us a bit of insights around that. What are some of your tips? Yeah.
Yeah, and so I will start a little bit with what actually supply chain is basically. So
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about the supply chain, it is not something that you can control all or on your own. When it comes to supply chain, like you are dependent on certain outside variables that are out of control of your company. For example, if we take a look at like a corporate company, you have a supply chain department, and then it gets in touch with either at one side it's in touch with the finance team, at the other side it is working with the brand management side, and there are outside factors that are changing on daily basis, like supplier relations, freight forwarding things, and all that. So you have to keep an eye on the economic conditions as well, and I think that is something very important to have, like a solid grip on your supply chain for your brand or a company. So the thing that I have seen that in the e-commerce industry is most of the sellers are like solo entrepreneurs. So they
Mm-hmm.
started, you can say, around um, 4 or 5 year back while running. You can say they started from either from a job, or some even started without even having a job at a corporate sector. They just started focusing on a product, and they started contacting suppliers. They got a margin, and then they got Amazon as a sales channel, so that they started selling on that. So in that whole race, there is one gap missing, because if whenever you see any brand that is successful, there are multiple departments at the backside, like customer service, marketing, growth, and then it get in touch with the supply chain part and the finance and legal side. So these all departments run in collaboration with each other, and if there is any kind of gap in the system, then it is hard to build a successful brand as you grow. So
Yeah.
most of the seller, like, they are highly enthusiastic, you can say, to push the sales to certain limit, so they will start learning the marketing part and they will cover that. But when it comes to the supply chain part, they will not exactly focus like what are the ins and outs and how they can manage inventory and cash flow and all that stuff. So I think that is where we were seeing gap, and while working with these big companies, we got a little bit insight on how they are controlling everything, and how an efficient brand can work when it scales to like 7 to 8 figures, and when you are managing, you
Mm-hmm.
can say, 150 to 200 SKUs.
Yes, I totally agree with everything you just shared. I feel like supply chain when it comes to selling on Amazon, for most people when they're getting started on this journey in terms of opening their business and selling on Amazon, they think that supply chain is something, it's like an afterthought. It's something you do towards the end. It's not really important at the
Yeah,
beginning. They just focus on the typical, listing optimization, advertisement, and so on, but they don't sometimes even do like inventory forecasting. They don't really know how to efficiently handle the inventory with 3PLs and all that. And I get what you mean. Like, I feel like once you start reaching a certain point, if you start neglecting this area of your business, you're gonna struggle. And we saw that the last couple of 2 years when everybody was
exactly.
having issues to have inventory from China. Shipments were taking extra months because of everything that was happening in terms of the collapse of the system. So for people that didn't have that into account, they were out of stock and they lost all the momentum in terms of the sales on
Yeah, I
Amazon.
would I would add one point here. Like in start, when you are just starting, you have like 4 or 5 SKUs and just building the brand. I think you will not feel the need of this at that stage. But when you grow, like after 1.5 or you can say almost 1 year, you will feel the gap that you are like your one SKU is getting in stock and then another one is getting out of stock. So you don't have a clear insight like what is happening with me. So that is where you actually need to focus on the supply chain part.
That's great. Awesome.
Yeah.
So now you were also mentioning, and I think it's important to bring this to the table because, as we mentioned, maybe at the beginning when you're getting started, maybe with just 500 units, you're gonna be fine if you don't have a good plan when it comes to supply chain. But the reality is that as you start scaling and you start bringing to the table 7 and 8 figures, where it's realistically we see the huge challenges, it's challenging, for these brands. So I would like to use this as an opportunity to basically hear your take about what have you seen in this space and how you're seeing 7 and 8 figures brand basically losing profits because of poor inventory management. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to add one point here because as a brand owner, you are always, you can say it is a mindset that you try to achieve more sales. So you are taking a look at external factors, but most of the time your mind is saying that let's push the stock and let's get it going. But in actually,
Mhm.
you will see sometimes that the things are not that much favorable, and you are just overly predicting it. So the first thing is to rely on data and don't over predict anything. I think that is the most common mistake that I have seen sellers making. They just order excess stock, or at sometimes
Mhm.
they don't know like what I have to order and what factors I
They're
have to look
guessing
at.
basically. They're guessing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mm.
That is like a very important thing to do in start. And I think in start, once you run into an excess stock, you will feel that burden over the time. So that is something very important. You need to change that mindset and rely on the data. When I talk about data, so it can be like search results from Amazon. It can also be you can say talking with the supplier and seeing the market trends, or
Mhm.
reading multiple reporting reports or statistical data that is relevant to your market or niche. So I will not go deep. I will not dig down deep into the resources, but
Mm.
just
Yeah.
to let you know, this is the main thing. And the second most important thing is inventory management is not something like you say, I have done this right now, I have placed the purchase order and let's forget it. So
Yeah.
once you place the purchase order, I think the real inventory management starts
Yeah.
while placing the order as well as after that. So you have to know, like let's say I have 10 SKUs and I have placed this purchase order. So
Mhm.
how I can I split this purchase order into multiple segments? Because for example, if you have put a huge purchase order and you are shipping it at once, then there are multiple instances that a supplier will a freight forwarder will either tell you that it got lost or there is some issue, there is some delay. So you will get out of stock on your main SKUs. So you need to split those purchase orders into certain categories and then ship that. Also, when you place a purchase order, you need to keep a check on that. So we have multiple solutions around that. Either you design a system, or you can just set automatic emailing stuff and to keep a check on the supplier to get updates
Okay.
on daily basis. So that is, I think, something very important to keep a check and balance of each and every part of your inventory.
Awesome.
And yeah, and another big challenge that I have seen is most of the sellers, when they order something, they don't use 3PL in start. So I think that is a very important, because they ship everything directly to Amazon, and there they have a stock, like you can say 100 days of cover or 120
Mm-hmm.
days of cover of stock. So that is something you need to focus on from start, and you need to have a 3PL in place and send. Only we have a limit, we send like 35 to 60 days of cover to Amazon. Whenever we reach up to 35 or 30, we create a shipment again and send that to Amazon. So in that way you can save a lot of storage cost, as well as you are avoiding a lot of risk when it comes to suspension from the Amazon side.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And just to quickly interrupt you, I think it's important to add on that point that the benefit of also doing what you just mentioned is that on Amazon Eyes, you're actually getting rid of inventory quite fast, right? So that actually is going to improve the history of your inventory score with the Amazon, because they see you're not sending thousands of units because you don't have a trip yet, and then they're just sitting in Amazon for months. So I think what you mentioned is good. I mean, have 1 month inventory, and as soon as you start going under that, you send more. So yeah, I just wanted to add that. Yeah.
Yeah, 100% I agree there. And another point that I would like to add, that comes a little bit in your later stage. So when you have a 3PL and you are sending in constantly stock from 3PL to Amazon, or purchase orders are coming, multiple purchase orders are receiving at 3PL, so you are not keeping an exact eye on how you are reconciling your stock. So when I talk about reconciling, it actually means like this is the stock that was delivered to the warehouse, and this is what I'm
Hmm.
sending out. So you lost that count many times, and you lost a lot of stuff. If your 3PL is not that much good, you lost some stuff in the 3PL, and you are, you are missing that part uh, as you grow. So
Yeah.
that is something you have to create a system, either in Sheets, or there are multiple tools available that you can do, that you can use for that purpose, to keep a track of the inventory, what is going in and how I am sending out, so that there is a perfect balance also.
Mm.
And one more thing I would recommend here, if you are working with a 3PL, try to get some kind of monthly, or you can say bi-weekly reports from them on the inventory of each SKU, so that you have an update, like my accounts are matching with what 3PL has. So this is another thing, like we see the reimbursement part with Amazon. This is
Hmm.
something that you need to do with 3PL, and I have seen people losing a lot of money while not looking at this part specifically.
Yeah, that's a good tip, because I feel most people think that Amazon is the only one that can actually lose your inventory, but you're right. Sometimes the 3PLs can also lose your
Yeah,
inventory, and if you keep track of that, I mean, it can be 100 units here, 100 units there, and then we're talking thousands of dollars, which can definitely hit your bottom line profit. So great advice on
exactly.
that. So before we jump this section to my next question, I would like to ask you. So usually, I know we mentioned this is not something that you do once, it's something that you constantly need to do when it comes to inventory management. So just to clarify for everybody here on board that are 7 figures and up, would you what is the time frame you would advise them to the frequency of having this check? Is it going to be weekly, every 2 weeks, monthly? What is usually the frequency of that?
It depends on a 3PL actually. So at some 3PLs we are running like a monthly check is a very good strategy.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the warehouses, if you can do bi-weekly, I think it is much better, but most of the warehouses are not providing those reports. So if you can do it on a monthly basis, at least once in a month, I think that is highly recommended, and your 3PL should actually follow that strategy, and just create a history of like how inventory is changing over time in either a Google sheet or in some tool, so that you remember how the units are changing and how I'm sending out the inventory.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, all this sounds amazing. They're all great strategies, but sometimes I have this conversation with brands that are 7 figures and up. And when you mention this to them, yeah, and I know Vincenzo, I need to implement this, but my brand is multi-channel. I'm selling across multiple countries. So doing this in every single country, every single marketplace is just mind blowing, right? So maybe let's talk about that. What are some of the complexity you have seen around that, and maybe some solutions if you can give us some? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think multi when it comes to global expansion, especially I have seen seller facing issues in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
because there you have multiple countries and you lose a track of how everything is managed. So, for example, if you are sending a shipment from China and you are trying to split it between US and EU, because obviously you cannot ship directly to US and then ship to Europe. So most of the time seller will do a split between Europe and US, and there you need to have like a forecasting system which should be based on each marketplace. You should take the numbers of each marketplace and then do a correct split for that, so that we get correct stock in each country. Because let me give you one example. For one of our brand, we were shipping stock from US. We were shipping from China to US, and in that process, what we did, we over predicted some stock that was sent to, like that was assigned for EU. So
Mm-hmm.
that is some kind of issues that most of the people ran into. And here I think the most important part is how you are forecasting the stock.
Okay.
So that is something highly challenging when it comes to multi-channel fulfillment, and also it layers of complexity add over there if you are having multiple channels as well. So this is something there where we take year-on-year sales and all the data, and we make sure that we don't over predict anything, and at the same time we try to work with the growth team, like what are the growth goals and how we can align that with the forecast that we have, so that we can in the end we can have a correct stock. So that is, I think, if we go down a little bit in that detail, it will become quite technical. But just to shortly
Mm-hmm.
explain, we highly focus on each sales channel in each marketplace, and we get the data from there, and then we place the purchase order to make a correct forecast. And
That's good.
a correct, yeah, and a correct split is assigned of at the supplier end, so that we don't mix or uh,
Mm-hmm.
get some error by shipping the stock. So that
So,
is a very important thing in the multi fulfillment brand.
so basically, just to summarize for everybody watching this, what you will do, you will have your own systems and processes for each individual country. So you keep track of inventory at the country level. And then I guess at the end of the month, maybe you do a consolidation with all the countries combined, maybe, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I think that that's a useful tip because I feel like maybe what most people do, they have, let's say, 5,000 units and they start shipping the units around the countries, and they will do the consolidation with all the countries combined at once, and they don't do all the diligence at the country level, and then that's why you start having all the discrepancies in numbers and all the compliance, and and then it
Yeah,
can become a bit too technical, as you mentioned. Awesome. Now we know this was huge issue last a couple of years because of everything that happened worldwide, but we know this is for sure gonna stay as a challenge, especially in 2023, as we see, Amazon being more strict with inventory limits
exactly.
and the fees and everything. So I wanted to ask you, what are some of the changes you see coming to Amazon in 2023, or what is some advice maybe you can provide us to overcome those as the year starts? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I will start a little bit with what we have faced in Q4. So, one thing that I would like to recommend anyone who is using AGL. So, if you are in Q4 for the next year, please don't ship anything
Mm-hmm.
when it's if something is arrived, like you can say, if you are focusing some stock that is to be arrived in October or November, please don't expect it to be arrived through AGL, because we have seen multiple shipments getting stuck in that part of the
Mm-hmm.
year. And I would recommend to avoid AGL using those days while shipping
Okay.
from China. So that is something that we learned from the Q4. And at the same time, I would like to add another point as well. So when you are forecasting a stock for the Q4, what most of the seller do is they take the whole December part as the sales.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that is like, for example, if you have a little bit of seasonality in your brand and you have a sales velocity, let's say 20 units per day in Q4, and normally it is like 5 or 10 units.
Mm-hmm.
So what it will do is, if you forecast it for, let's say, for the last 10 to 12 days over forecast, then you will carry that inventory for the next 4 or 5 months. Or if
Yeah.
you do something more, if you sell a little bit more than that, then the error and the complexity will add on. So in Q4, what we have learned, that you have to forecast till 18th, till 20th of December. And after that, what you can do is, as a backup, you should plan FBM, so that you can cover the last days of Q4 if you sell something more than you predicted. So I think that is something that will add value to for the lot of sellers, because most of the people, when Q4 is over, and especially this year, they are left with the overstock condition. So
Awesome.
that is, I think Q4 is giving us some lessons here.
That's a
Yeah.
good advice, and I think just to conclude that point as well, I feel like using last couple of years as a benchmark, I don't think it's also a good thing to do right now, because most people I have found that they saw an increase across some of their brands last couple of years because of everything that was happening with the pandemic, people shopping more online and all of that. But we
Yeah.
have seen that in some of the niches, sales are going downwards, and therefore, if you do your projection based on 2021, when everybody was at home and they need to use Amazon, and then you use that to buy inventory for 2023, you might find, as you're mentioning, with more stock in hand, but then it's going to cause you more issue in terms of management, higher fees, and so on. So it's a good point for sure.
Yeah, one point I would like to add here as well. So there is one more thing. If you are running out of stock for a brand, for a product, so what you can do is, like, out of stock is something that is highly, you can say, damaging to your brand and your
Mm-hmm.
IPI score. So what a little bit of a trick that you can do is, for example, you have like 5 or 10 units of a product left. What you
Mm-hmm.
can do is you can apply a price hike on that listing SKU, so it will move that inventory to a stranded state. So what this will do is, it will not affect your IPI score in that way, which, like, if you run out of stock, because that is highly damaging to your listing. So when the listing goes to stranded, it will pause the sales for a little bit, when until you get more stock, but you can improve your IPI score in that way. And
Mm.
I think that is something that will save, if you are at the brink of, damaging your IPI score. So that can save you some.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
basically, what you would advise is to increase the price significantly. So you basically suppress the listing due to the pricing. The Amazon suppress when you increase the price significantly, and the inventory becomes stronger. That's what you mean, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it
That
will,
you lose the
the
buy box.
IPS,
Yeah.
exactly, IPI score will take it as a standard, not something that you are out of stock.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I have never heard
Yeah.
that, so that's a good thing. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And great. So now I think we're coming towards the end, and now for sure, based on everything you just shared, I would like to hear more about what Brankit can do for all those sellers that are hearing this, because I know we're talking about all some of the high level strategies and some of the tips, but realistically, some sellers they don't really have the bandwidth to implement this on a daily basis, and that's where Brankit can come in and help them. So maybe you can give us a little bit about what are the services you guys provide and how does it work? Yeah.
Yeah, so actually, we are in the supply. We are solely focused on the supply chain part of e-commerce, and we
Mhm.
have an in-house team. We manage each and everything from our office, and I think that is something very important when it comes to collaboration across the team. So this is something that in the supply chain is very important while while managing a portfolio of, you can say, 200 or 300 SKUs.
Mhm.
At the same time, when it comes to forecasting, I think that is the most challenging part for every brand. And one thing I would like to mention here, if you are even, you can say, a big corporate company, or a brand, for example PNG, still the forecasting that you will generate will only be at maximum 60% accurate. So we need
Mhm.
to take that into account, and if an expert is not looking into that, or you don't have a system there, then your chances are like 30% or 20%. So
Mhm.
over time, what we have done is we have tried to test multiple software as well, and at the same time, we have built our in-house systems that that allows a lot of flexibility in managing the forecasting for multiple SKUs and large brands. And at the same time, we take inputs and feedbacks from the growth team, your growth team, or if you are managing your own brand, we will take the marketing input or the deals that you have, and that will be in the alignment of the stock that we will order over time. So in that way, you will have the whole, you can say, in the graphical representation as well, and all the numbers for the next coming months that you will be selling. So that is something that we are doing in house, and we try to do it through manual as well as through tools that we have tested over time. And
Awesome.
yeah, and like most of our services are highly relevant to the companies that are in 7 to 8 figures and most want to scale and have systems and SOPs. So we have tried ERP systems as well. We have worked on Skibana and NetSuite, and at the same time we are working on the implementation part of that as well, and how
Mm-hmm.
to structure each and every department, and how to improve the work, how to get more work out of it for us, so that you don't have to rely on manual, you can say, manual entries or manual persons.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a more, you can say, a more favorable part for the brands that are selling, to have a system in place instead of, you can say, increasing the headcount.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So these are some of the services that we provide, and I think these are like highly important for those companies that are scaling, and because all of our experience is coming from the aggregator space and the
Mm-hmm.
large brands that are dealing, like, you can say, 1,000 or 1,500 SKUs, and we know all the challenges that a seller can face if they want to scale from 7 to 8 and so on.
Wow, that's great, Steve. So
Yeah,
yeah, for sure. I mean, you guys are the perfect solution for everybody that's struggling right now with supply chain issues and things to do with inventory management. So for sure, I would advise to everybody watching this to reach out. And for that, I don't know if you can share with us maybe how people can reach out to your team, your website, anything you going on. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm available on LinkedIn as well as on Facebook, and we do have a website that is going to be live soon. So I think LinkedIn will be a best option if you want to reach out, and I'm always available. Also, if you want to, I can attach my email, or you can attach my email, so that will
Sure.
also work. Yeah,
Yeah, that's great, Hasib. So thank you very much for your time. I'm looking forward to have you in a future edition so we can keep talking about supply chain issues. Yeah,
sure,
been a
man.
pleasure.
Yeah, same here.
Thank you.
It was nice talking to you.
Bye bye.